My sister-in-law poisoned my daughter to steal company secrets. Now I exposed all her plot and watched justice in courtroom. I am Megan Foster, 42 years old. As usual, I was bustling around our home in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston, busy with my morning preparations. While getting breakfast ready in the kitchen, I called up to the second floor. "Ashley, are you up?" I always worry about my 15-year-old daughter oversleeping. My husband Daniel came down the stairs and greeted me with a smile. "Good morning, Megan." He works as a sales manager at Curate North America, a major cleaning equipment manufacturer. He always seems busy with sales for new products. "Early start today?" I asked, to which Daniel replied, "Yes, I have got a presentation on a new product. I am a bit nervous." I patted his shoulder lightly and encouraged him. "You will do great. I am sure it will go well." Finally, Ashley came down and the three of us had breakfast together. "Mom, can I go to the mall with my friends after school today?" Ashley asked. I thought for a moment before asking back, "Is your homework done?" She answered confidently, "Of course. I finished it all yesterday." "All right then, you can go, but be back by 8 p.m. I gave permission, and Ashley exclaimed happily, "Thank you." After breakfast, we each headed off to our daily routines. I spend my days as an English teacher at Quincy High School. I love teaching and find great joy in watching my students grow. That evening, when Daniel returned home, he looked a bit troubled. "What is wrong?" I asked, and after a moment's hesitation, he began to speak. "Well, it seems Rachel has lost her job." Rachel is Daniel's 35-year-old sister-in-law. The moment I heard her name, a wave of anxiety washed over me. All the troubles she had caused in the past flashed through my mind like a montage. Daniel continued, "She is asking if she can stay with us temporarily. Do you think it will be okay?" I chose my words carefully as I answered, "Well, do you remember what happened the last time she stayed with us?" Back then, Daniel interrupted me saying, I know, but I think this time will be different. She seems to have learned her lesson." I let out a deep sigh. Daniel's kindness is both his strength and sometimes his weakness. "All right, but if anything happens, it will be on me." "I am sure things will work out this time," Daniel said confidently. That night, I could not sleep. I was worried that Rachel's arrival might disrupt our peaceful daily life. Looking out the window, I saw stars twinkling in the quiet night sky. I finally closed my eyes, praying that this tranquility would last for a long time. Rachel arrived at our house on a rainy Saturday afternoon. The doorbell rang, and Daniel rushed to greet her. I watched from the living room, feeling a bit tense. "Hey, Rachel." It has been a while. Daniel's cheerful voice could be heard. Rachel's slightly reserved voice replied, "Thank you for having me, Daniel." As they entered the living room, I stood up to greet her. "Welcome, Rachel." Rachel looked a bit thinner and tired. "Thank you, Megan." "I am sorry for the trouble," she said. Her words sounded sincere, but the caution in my heart did not completely disappear. Ashley came running down the stairs exclaiming, "Aunt Rachel!" They were happy to see each other after a long time and immediately started chatting comfortably. During dinner that evening, Rachel told us about her job loss. The company's financial situation worsened, and there was a large-scale layoff. It was so sudden, her voice trailed off. Daniel gently said, "It is okay, Rachel. You can look for a new job while you are here. There is no need to rush." I agreed, but internally I had mixed feelings. A worry crossed my mind that Rachel's stay might be prolonged. As a few days passed, I began to notice that Rachel's presence was gradually influencing our family's daily life. What particularly concerned me was how quickly she was becoming close to Ashley. One evening, while I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, I could hear Ashley and Rachel's cheerful laughter from the living room. Listening closely, I heard Rachel saying, "Yes, and then in high school this happened." I found myself unconsciously straining to hear. Rachel's high school stories should not be very good memories. I clearly remember her causing problems back then. "Mom, what are you doing?" Ashley's sudden voice startled me back to reality. "Oh, I was just lost in thought," I answered, feeling a bit embarrassed about my behavior. During dinner, Rachel began asking Daniel about his work. "Daniel, how is the new product development at Curate? I am really curious." Daniel looked a bit uncomfortable but answered, "Well, we have some new things coming out, but I cannot say much. It is company confidential, you know." Rachel persisted, "I see, but what is the general direction?" Environmentally friendly products, perhaps? Feeling a bit awkward, I tried to change the subject. By the way, Rachel, how is your job search going? She frowned slightly and replied, Well, I am trying, but it is not easy to find something. That night, I spoke to Daniel in our bedroom. Rachel seems to have gotten quite close to Ashley lately. Daniel looked up from his book and said, Yes, I think it is good stimulation for Ashley. I hesitated but continued, but I am a bit worried considering Rachel's past. Daniel frowned slightly and said, Megan, let us let bygones be bygones. I think Rachel has changed. I fell silent. I did not want to disrupt the family harmony, but internally I was still worried. Looking out the window, I saw moonlight quietly illuminating the garden. How long would this peaceful daily life continue? With these thoughts, I closed my eyes. It was Friday evening, and I had just returned from school. While preparing dinner in the kitchen, I was reflecting on today's class. It was impressive to see the students discussing Romeo and Juliet. I am home, Ashley's voice called out, and I turned around with a smile to say, Welcome back. However, that smile quickly faded. Ashley did not look well. Ashley, are you okay? I asked, and she weakly replied, I am feeling a bit sick. I immediately rushed to Ashley's side and put my hand on her forehead. There was no fever, but she clearly looked unwell. How do you feel? I asked, and Ashley began to say, My stomach hurts and I feel nauseous, when suddenly her face changed color. The next moment, she rushed to the bathroom and began vomiting violently. I watched anxiously, rubbing her back. Rachel! I called out. She should be upstairs, but there was no response. After a while, Ashley's condition worsened. Her stomach pain intensified, and she began to break out in a cold sweat. I tried to stay calm despite my panic. Daniel, come home quickly. I prayed in my heart as I called my husband. Ashley is in trouble. Come home right away. Before I could hear Daniel's response, I heard Ashley's cry of pain. This is not normal. Without hesitation, I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? My daughter suddenly started having stomach pain and vomiting, and it is getting worse. I understand. We will dispatch an ambulance right away. Can you give me your address? I gave the address in a trembling voice. The operator calmly instructed me on what to do, but my mind was blank. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of sirens approaching. I opened the front door and let the paramedics in. They immediately began checking Ashley's condition. We will transport her to Massachusetts General Hospital, the paramedic said. I nodded, clutching Ashley's hand tightly. Mom, I am scared, Ashley said weakly. It is okay, I am here with you, I desperately encouraged her. Just before getting into the ambulance, Rachel came down the stairs. What happened? She asked, looking surprised. Ashley suddenly got sick. We are going to the hospital, I answered briefly. I will come too, Rachel started to say, but I shook my head. No, stay here. Explain the situation to Daniel when he gets back. In the ambulance, I held Ashley's hand tightly, watching the journey to the hospital. Amidst the blaring sirens, my head was filled with anxiety and fear. Upon arrival at the hospital, Ashley was immediately taken to the treatment room. I waited in the waiting room, feeling overwhelmed with worry. After a while, Daniel rushed in, out of breath. Megan, how is Ashley's condition? We do not know yet. The doctor is examining her now. We clung to each other, waiting for the doctor's report. Time seemed to stretch on forever. Finally, the doctor appeared and approached us. His expression was serious, and my heart began to race. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, your daughter's condition is critical, the doctor said. She is showing symptoms of acute poisoning. We have not identified the cause yet, but it is likely she was exposed to some kind of toxin. Daniel and I were speechless. Poison? How could Ashley have come into contact with such a thing? We have started detoxification treatment. The next 24 hours will be crucial, the doctor continued. We nodded at the doctor's words, but our minds were in chaos. When we were led to Ashley's room, we saw our daughter surrounded by various medical equipment. I could not help but burst into tears. How could this happen? Daniel muttered. At that moment, I suddenly realized something. Rachel has not come yet. Daniel looked a bit surprised and said, Oh, right, I should call her. While he was calling Rachel, I sat by Ashley's bedside, holding her hand. Hang in there, Ashley. Mom and Dad are here with you. Daniel came back with a slightly confused expression. Rachel says she has something to do. She cannot come today. I frowned. What kind of errand could be more important than her niece's life being in danger? As the night wore on, we did not leave Ashley's side. Nurses came regularly to check on her, offering words of encouragement. However, the anxiety in my heart would not disappear. Looking out the window, I could see the Boston night skyline. A view that would normally be beautiful did not touch my heart at all. I just continued to pray for Ashley's recovery. As dawn broke and a new day began, Ashley's condition continued to fluctuate. Doctors and nurses were monitoring her around the clock, but without knowing the cause, they could not provide fundamental treatment. Daniel and I took turns taking short naps, never leaving Ashley's side. With fatigue and anxiety, our sense of time became increasingly blurred. In the afternoon, there was a knock on the hospital room door. 2 unfamiliar men entered the room. "Mr. and Mrs. Foster?" one of them asked. When we nodded, they showed their identification. "We are from the hospital security department. Could we have a word with you?" With a mix of anxiety and curiosity, we followed them. They led us to a room in the hospital. "Actually, we noticed something concerning in last night's surveillance camera footage," one of the security staff said. "It is footage from the parking lot when your daughter was brought in." They pointed to a monitor. It showed footage of the nighttime parking lot. We could see the ambulance arriving and Ashley being brought in. And then, "Is that?" I almost cried out. A familiar figure could be seen near the ambulance. "Rachel," Daniel said in a surprised voice. Indeed, the figure looked like Rachel. She seemed to be wandering around the ambulance. "What is this?" I started to say, when the room's door opened and 2 police officers entered. "Mr. and Mrs. Foster, we are Detectives Johnson and Parker." One of them introduced themselves. "We have a few things we would like to confirm regarding your daughter's case." We nodded, but our minds were in turmoil. Was the situation serious enough to involve the police? "Actually, we received a tip," Detective Johnson said. "There might be important information about the cause of your daughter's poisoning symptoms." Detective Parker continued. "There is some evidence in the next room, Mrs. Foster. I am sorry, but could you take a peek discreetly?" Bewildered, I followed the instructions. I approached the door and cautiously peeked inside. What I saw took my breath away. In the center of the room was a large monitor showing Rachel. It clearly showed her approaching the ambulance with something in the parking lot. Various photos and documents were pinned to the wall. Upon closer inspection, there were photos of toxins reportedly found in Rachel's car and records of Snapchat exchanges between her and Ashley. In my mind, various memories raced through like a montage. The events since Rachel came to our house, her rapid intimacy with Ashley, her unusual interest in Daniel's work. Everything started to connect. "Mrs. Foster." Detective Johnson's voice brought me back to reality. When I returned to the room, Daniel looked at me worriedly. "Megan, what happened? What did you see?" I was at a loss for words, just shaking my head. My body started trembling and I could not stop it. "Mrs. Foster, are you all right?" Detective Parker asked concernedly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but my mind was still in chaos. "Rachel, I could barely squeeze out the words. Daniel put his arm around my shoulders and gently asked, "Megan, calm down. What happened?" With a trembling voice, I began to explain what I saw in the room. Rachel's actions, the evidence of toxins, the Snapchat messages. When I finished speaking, a heavy silence fell over the room. Daniel's face was pale, and he seemed to be at a loss for words too. "Is this real?" Daniel finally spoke. Detective Johnson answered quietly, "We find it hard to believe too, but the evidence is clear." "But why?" I asked in a desperate voice. "Why would Rachel?" Detective Parker began to explain, carefully choosing his words. "At this point, it is speculation, but it seems Miss Rachel had a different motive. She was..." At that moment, my cell phone rang loudly. Looking at the screen, I saw it was a call from Rachel. All eyes in the room focused on my phone. I looked at the detectives' faces, and after seeing them nod, I answered the phone with a trembling hand. "Hello, Rachel?" My voice was shaking. "Megan, listen." Rachel's voice was filled with tension. "I am coming there right now. I need to talk about Ashley. I made eye contact with the detectives. Detective Johnson gave a small nod, so I continued the conversation. Rachel, what did you do to Ashley? My voice was a mix of anger and fear. On the other end of the phone, I heard Rachel gasp. You know. Her voice became thin. Why? I asked, trying to suppress the urge to scream. Why Ashley? Megan, listen, Rachel said desperately. This is all a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt Ashley. At that moment, I heard the sound of sirens in the background. I could hear Rachel inhale sharply. Rachel, where are you now? I asked. In the hospital parking lot, her voice was trembling. Megan, The call cut off. The room was once again enveloped in heavy silence. She is here, Detective Johnson said quietly. Our colleagues are already on their way to the scene. Daniel stood up. We have to go. We need to see Rachel. I stood up too, but my legs were shaking. I'm going to, Detective Parker said cautiously. Both of you, this could be dangerous. Cannot you leave it to us? But Daniel and I were determined. Rachel is our family, Daniel said. We need to be the ones to meet her. The detectives hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. All right, but please follow our instructions strictly. We hurried to the parking lot. In the elevator, I gripped Daniel's hand tightly. His hand was cold and trembling too. When we arrived at the parking lot, there were several police cars parked, and in the center, one car, Rachel's car. Rachel? Daniel called out. The car door slowly opened, and Rachel appeared. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with tears. Daniel, Megan. Her voice was trembling. I want to explain. Police officers approached Rachel. She showed no signs of resistance, just staring at us. Why? I asked again. Why Ashley? Rachel took a deep breath. I did not mean to hurt Ashley. What I wanted was... At that moment, her words trailed off. Rachel's eyes widened, and she clutched her chest, collapsing. Rachel! Daniel rushed to her. Police officers and paramedics responded immediately, and Rachel was placed on a stretcher and rushed into the hospital. We stood there, stunned by the scene. Everything felt surreal, lacking a sense of reality. Detective Johnson approached us. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, it looks like we are in for a long night. Let us return to your daughter's room. We will explain everything there. We nodded silently and headed back to Ashley's side. Our minds were full of questions and anxiety, but one thing was certain. The truth that was about to be revealed would change our lives forever. Back in Ashley's hospital room, the sight of our daughter greeted us. She was still unconscious, surrounded by various medical equipment. Every time I saw this scene, my heart felt like it was being squeezed. Detectives Johnson and Parker quietly entered the room. Their expressions were grave, reflecting the seriousness of what they were about to say. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, Detective Johnson began. Rachel's interrogation is complete. She confessed to everything. Daniel and I held our breath. The moment to learn the truth had arrived. Detective Parker continued. Rachel's motive was to steal confidential information from your company, Mr. Foster. Daniel's face contorted with surprise and confusion. My company? Yes, Detective Johnson nodded. Rachel had been envious of your success for years. It seems she was trying to sell information to a rival company of carer. My head was spinning, and I could not find words. I could not believe Rachel would go that far. But why Ashley? I asked in a trembling voice. Detective Parker carefully continued his explanation. Rachel gradually poisoned Ashley to divert the family's attention. By doing so, she was trying to steal work-related information from Mr. Foster while the family was in chaos. The moment I heard those words, I felt something collapse inside me. Daniel seemed to be feeling the same way, almost collapsing into his chair. But why go that far? Daniel said in a raw voice. Detective Johnson let out a deep sigh. It seems Rachel had been suffering from jealousy and feelings of inadequacy for years. Your success, it seems, had been eating away at her heart. I approached Ashley's bed with a mixture of anger and sadness. For something like this, our daughter... My words caught in my throat. Daniel placed his hand on my shoulder. His hand was trembling too. Megan. Suddenly, the door to the room opened, and a doctor hurriedly entered. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, Rachel's condition has suddenly changed. We looked up in surprise. Come to think of it, why did Rachel... I asked the doctor. The doctor hesitated a bit before answering. It seems Rachel was also exposed to the poison. Probably, in the process of poisoning Ashley, she accidentally ingested some herself. It is likely due to her carelessness and ignorance in handling the toxin. Hearing those words, we were at a loss for words. Rachel too? Is her life in danger? I asked, in a voice surprisingly calm even to myself. The doctor nodded. She is currently being treated in the intensive care unit. However, the situation is critical. A heavy silence fell over the room. Even the detectives seemed bewildered by this unexpected turn of events. Ashley's treatment. Daniel anxiously asked the doctor. We are doing our best right now. With the information we obtained from Rachel, we can now provide more appropriate treatment, the doctor answered, in a slightly hopeful tone. I let out a deep breath. It is difficult to have hope in this situation, but we must look forward. What will happen now? I muttered. Detective Johnson quietly answered, We will continue our investigation. There are still many points to be clarified, such as the connection with the rival company. Daniel looked up and said with a determined expression, I will take responsibility for the company matters. For now, Ashley's recovery is the top priority. I squeezed Daniel's hand. Yes, saving our daughter's life is the most important thing right now. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, Detective Parker said, the next few days are going to be tough, but we will do our best to support you. We nodded gratefully. Looking out the window, the light of dawn was gradually spreading. The beginning of a new day and the beginning of our new battle. As time passed, the number of medical staff coming and going in the hospital corridor increased. Ashley's condition remained critical. Daniel and I took turns staying by her side, continuously praying for her recovery. Megan, Daniel spoke to me with a tired expression. I called carer. I explained the situation and decided to take some time off. I nodded silently. Now we need to focus solely on Ashley. Amidst all this, an unexpected hand of support was extended to us. My colleagues from Quincy High School visited the hospital one after another, offering words of encouragement. Sarah Johnson, the head of the English department, held my hand tightly and said, Megan, if there is anything we can do, just say the word. The students are worried about Ashley too. Hearing those words, I felt tears welling up. Thank you, Sarah. I will let Ashley know everyone's feelings. And to my surprise, my students had made message cards for Ashley. The walls of the hospital room were decorated with colorful cards. The thoughts contained in each one of them gave us strength. One day, the attending physician came with a new proposal. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, I would like to consult with Dr. Emily Harris, a toxicology specialist from Boston Children's Hospital. Would that be all right with you? We immediately agreed. The next day, Dr. Harris visited the hospital room. She greeted us with a warm smile. I would like to try a new detoxification therapy, Dr. Harris began to explain. This is a recently developed method that shows promise for cases like Ashley's. We felt like we had found a ray of hope. Please help Ashley, I said desperately. The treatment began, and we watched Ashley's condition with bated breath. As time passed, little by little, changes began to appear in her condition. Her pulse is stabilizing, the nurse reported happily. Hearing those words, Daniel and I hugged each other spontaneously. We cannot relax yet, but this is definitely progress. Meanwhile, Rachel's condition was also gradually improving. She had not regained consciousness yet, but it seemed she was out of life-threatening danger. Megan, Daniel quietly spoke to me one day about Rachel. What should we do when she wakes up? I let out a deep breath. Honestly, I do not have the emotional capacity to think about Rachel yet. For now, I just want to think about Ashley. Daniel nodded silently. He probably feels the same way. As days passed, we continued to pray for Ashley's recovery, swinging between hope and anxiety. The sky visible from the hospital room window sometimes clouded over, sometimes cleared up, as if reflecting our state of mind. Then one day, Ashley's fingers moved slightly. Ashley, I gasped, holding my daughter's hand. Can you hear me? It is Mom. At that moment, Ashley's eyelids trembled slightly. A new ray of hope was lit in our hearts. Several weeks have passed since Ashley regained consciousness. Every day, little by little, her condition improves. At first it was difficult for her to speak, but now she can have short conversations. Mom, Ashley calls out in a small voice. Aunt Rachel. I gently squeeze my daughter's hand. Do not worry about Aunt Rachel. You just need to focus on your recovery. In parallel with Ashley's recovery, preparations for Rachel's trial were progressing. She was indicted for industrial espionage and assault, set to stand trial in federal court. "Megan," Daniel quietly spoke to me one day. "I got a call from Rachel's lawyer. She wants to talk to us." I let out a deep sigh. "I am not ready for that yet." Daniel nodded, showing understanding. "I see. There is no need to rush." Days passed, and Ashley's recovery progressed further. Finally, the day came for her to be discharged from the hospital. That day, when we arrived at the hospital lobby, we were greeted by a surprising sight. A large crowd of people had gathered there, colleagues from Quincy High School, students, neighbors. Everyone was there with warm smiles to celebrate Ashley's discharge. A large banner reading "Welcome Home, Ashley" was hung, and applause erupted. Ashley smiled, seeming a bit embarrassed but happy. "Everyone, thank you." Sarah Johnson approached and gently hugged Ashley. "You did well. Everyone is truly happy about your recovery." I felt tears welling up. Through this ordeal, we not only reaffirmed the strength of our family bonds, but also realized the importance of community connections. In the car on the way home, Daniel quietly said, "Megan, we have learned a lot from this experience. The importance of family, community bonds, and also the difficulty of trusting people." I nodded. "Yes, but I think we can move forward with a new perspective now." Ashley spoke in a small voice from the back seat. "Mom, Dad, thank you. I want to become stronger." Hearing those words, Daniel and I looked at each other and smiled. When we arrived home, there were welcome home decorations on the front porch. We could feel the kindness of our neighbors. As we entered the house, Ashley slowly sat down on the sofa. "Home really is the best," she said happily. Late that night, after Daniel and I had finished tidying up, the phone suddenly rang. It was from an unknown number, but I had a feeling and decided to answer. "Hello? Megan?" And the trembling voice of Rachel came from the other end of the line. I was momentarily at a loss for words, but I made eye contact with Daniel and put the phone on speaker mode. "Rachel?" I answered, trying to maintain my composure. "Megan, Daniel, I am truly sorry." Rachel's voice was tearful. "I know what I did is unforgivable, but I felt I had to apologize." Daniel and I listened silently. Rachel continued, "For hurting Ashley, for betraying your family, I am really, really sorry." A long silence followed. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Rachel, your actions deeply hurt us. We cannot forgive you right away, but we have received your apology." I added, "It will take time, Rachel, but if you are truly repentant, maybe someday there will be a day of reconciliation." After hanging up the phone, Daniel and I were silent for a long time. This conversation might be the beginning of our long healing process. We quietly sat around Ashley, spending family time together. Outside, the sun was setting, hinting at the start of a new day. Through this experience, we learned many things: the bonds of family, community support, and the unpredictability of life. But at the same time, we gained the strength to overcome difficulties. Many challenges still await us in our future life: reconciliation with Rachel, Ashley's complete recovery, and readjustment to daily life. However, we have the strength to overcome them. Looking out the window, stars were beginning to shine. It was as if they were celebrating the beginning of our new life. A few days later, we received a call from the prosecutor. The date for Rachel's trial had been set. "The trial starts next month," Daniel informed me. According to the prosecutor, Rachel will be charged with industrial espionage and assault. I let out a deep sigh. How long could the sentence be? Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "The charge of industrial espionage alone carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison, and then there is the assault charge for Ashley." "That long?" I could not hide my surprise. "Yes, but the actual sentence will depend on the trial outcome. Rachel's attitude and level of remorse will also be taken into consideration." Ashley quietly interjected into the conversation. "Did Aunt Rachel really do something bad?" We looked at our daughter's face. Ashley's eyes showed sadness and confusion. "Yes, Ashley," I explained gently, "but she will receive appropriate judgment based on the law, and maybe someday she might be able to rehabilitate herself." Daniel nodded. "That is right. Justice is important, but at the same time, we should not forget the possibility of forgiveness. Through this conversation, we once again felt the importance of family bonds and the complexity of human nature. Rachel's actions are unforgivable, but she is also human. After she receives her judgment, how she will rebuild her life, that might also be something we need to watch over. Well, tomorrow marks the beginning of new days, I said to my family. Daniel and Ashley nodded, and we looked at each other. Having overcome this ordeal and strengthened our family bonds, we were ready to take a new step forward.